Welcome to the Wisdom Check by Tabletop to Keyboard. This is going to be our bi-weekly podcast where we discuss things such as Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, I think maybe we need to turn up my mic a little bit, guys. How about some more game?
This is the intro to end all intros. Talk about Dungeons, Dragons, and
Now, I don't think that's proper. This is a family show after all. This is the intro we can use, fellas. It's good, clean fun for everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Check, where we have wholesome conversations about the dilemmas we face every day.
Nah, hold on a second. I got your intro right here. Yeah, that's better. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Well, I'm right, Jeff's wrong. We're going to have guests on to talk about it. It's going to be awesome. Because I said so.
He is right. He did say so. I don't know. Is surf music the best music for a podcast about D&D?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
This just in, nobody can agree on our intro for this podcast. So we're just going to start. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Roll for initiative. Fuck. A 1. It's like every time.
Well, we are here on our lovely Monday night, ready to rock and roll. And today we are joined with Chris A. Jackson, and he is a writer, and he does a lot of work with Pathfinder, among other things. So that may be where you've seen his name in the past. And we're going to be talking a bit about the whole process of writing books and writing particularly for games, and how things may be a little similar and somewhat different in those two cases. So go ahead and say hello for us there.
Hey there, everyone.
Awesome. And with me, as always, is Dustin, as you saw earlier. So, and by always, I mean most of the time. Every once in a while, we have another person over there helping us out. But today, it is Dustin and I running the show.
When I'm not busy being on vacation somewhere, I'm usually here.
That's right.
Busy on vacation.
I just got back from Disney with the family. I was gone for like 2 weeks, so
Wow.
they didn't know what to do without me around here.
Yeah, it was a shell shock. Yeah, that's for sure. So, what we like to get started with is a little bit of how you got into gaming in the first place. What was your intro experience there?
Back when the world was young and dinosaurs. I've been gaming since 1970.
Wow.
No kidding. I was a reader. I've always been a reader. Got hooked on science fiction and fantasy in high school. And so I was on my way back from track meet one evening in high school and junior high school. And I heard, "I'll shoot him with my magic missile." And I was like, wait, what? And so I go back to the back end of the bus, and two of my friends and somebody I didn't even know were playing this game, and they had a little piece of graph paper and they had some books and some dice that I didn't even recognize because they weren't like square. And I was like, what the hell's going on, guys? And so I just watched them play for 30 minutes, and I was like, this is the shit. And so I really got into gaming in high school, and then tripled and quadrupled my into gaming quotient in college, picking up a bunch of other games. Traveler.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Star Frontiers. Oh, God, what was the spy one? Can't remember.
Spycraft, right, but
no, this was
much more later one there.
I can't remember. There's so many. Gamma World. I love Gamma World. It was a great game.
I forgot about Gamma World.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Throwback, yeah.
So yeah, a lot of these games could really use reboot. Fun, but yeah, that was and then I kind of fell off grid for a little bit because college and actually trying to get grades, and then I got into grad school, and I met up with some friends there that gamed, and I wrote this massive campaign for them that took about 2 years to run. So And off and on, I've been pretty much gaming ever since, but not nearly as much recently because we're not near any groups of our gaming friends. So I really get into.
We understand that
and get online, but
well, we sure do. Yeah, we're all on the Roll20 these days because a bunch of us have moved across the planet from each other.
Right. Exactly that.
But at least we have things like Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds now. Well, at least it's possible.
Yeah, I need to spend some time, get the hell away from my keyboard time, and get into that. But we do game whenever I get in with my friends. Most of my friends are down in Florida right now, so we go down there, 3 or 4 times a year and just spend a weekend.
All except for that winter that's coming up.
5-day weekend. What? I'm sorry.
For winter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's good. So it sounds like you've done mostly homebrew stuff, and that's very familiar territory for us. Our DM is all in his head, doing his own homebrew campaigns since we've been really started. And that's honestly, I don't know we've really ever played anything outside of that.
Yeah, I mean we're like 20 years strong on it. With the system changes, but the game stays the same.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I started playing my own world in my God, what was it? D&D.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a long time ago. But yeah, the game's changed, but the world's the same, and you just kind of reboot everything. But I've played a lot of modules in Pathfinder, and some in some other games. But we played the Pathfinder APs. I can't even all the different ones. Of course, the pirate ones, Shackles. I GM'd that one. That was fun. But awesome. I do enjoy the homebrew ones a little bit more because it gives me a lot more creativity and
I was going to say
stuff. I mean, you know how it is to GM. You're herding cats anyway, so they're always off the street, and so you just go with it. Say, oh, okay, follow that little rabbit down the hall. Go. So that's fun.
So was it a conscious decision by you to start with homebrew, or was that just kind of like for us where couldn't afford the books, so we had to make up our own?
I think it was a conscious decision because way back when stuff really wasn't that expensive. I mean, you could get some of the original D&D modules for a song like, $4.99.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was back when the books were $15.
Jeez.
So I kid you not, the old AD&D books, all of them they were $15 a pop. So,
man,
but after a while, it got really old because every 4 years they come up with another version of the game. And you have to buy a whole bunch of new books. So
they were starting to figure out that business model, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's reboot those, right? Mm-hmm. So Pathfinder just rebooted into second edition, and honestly, I don't know if I'll buy the game.
Really?
Because I have all of first edition. I enjoy the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I can make shit up all day long. And and a friend of mine, she's like a gameaholic. I mean, she's got a bookcase full of games, and she keeps buying more stuff before she's even played the stuff that's on the bookcase.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so she's got a rack of APs that's probably 1.5 feet.
Good Lord.
We've played about a third of them, so we'll be older. Much, much older before we finish all the stuff that we already have for first edition. But I do hear the second edition's a fun play.
Yeah, I picked up the book.
Them doing it, yeah.
We actually haven't tried it yet. But he's been reading it because he might run us through something, and we just haven't got around to doing it yet. But that is, it's on our agenda to maybe try it sometime.
It's only like 500 and something pages. You ought to be able to do that overnight. I did.
Nice and easy.
I did buy Starfinder though because that was just the coolest freaking game.
Oh yeah.
So, and my editor at Paizo, James Sutter, was one of the creating minds behind Starfinder. So
that's cool.
That's sweet. I mean, so that's an interesting topic. There is how in the world did you get started getting into writing for games? Like we were talking earlier about it a little bit. And you were saying that you went straight from running a game to getting in the industry as a writer, and that's amazing. Like
well, it wasn't as easy as just one hop. when I started writing, it was pretty much old school. When you submitted a novel, you pretty much had to print it out on bond paper. It's about that thick, and you have to mail it into an editor or an agent to try to get accepted. And it's a grueling process. And I had an agent for a very long time who wasn't working for me, and I got very, very sick of it. And so I had written, aside from the ones that were that spun off of a game that I ran in grad school. Those, first effort, they were kind of rough, so I kind of put those aside and started writing something else. And I did submit those, and they promptly got rejected. But that's part of the game. And so I wrote like 3 other novels, and I started self-publishing. And that was back in the day when self-publishing was kind of looked down upon by any legitimate publisher. Well, the world's changed in the last 15 years or so, and rightfully so. I mean, the market decides what's good and not good.
Right. Things have really opened up quite a bit.
It's pretty amazing, actually. I have conversations with publishers now all the time, and they know perfectly well that I've got 16 self-published novels out there, but they don't bat an eye. What they're interested in is how are your sales, and
what's your distribution?
90,000 books in the last few years. How's that? That's pretty good. So
really good.
got monumentally lucky with the self-publishing stuff, and that going to conventions. One thing I'll mention. Every step I've had in my career is from a relationship that I've had, somebody I've met at a convention.
Wow.
So I got a deal, an offer to publish from a small press, Dragon Moon Press, and I wrote a 4-book series with them, and had a great time with the editor. My editor there, her name's Gabrielle Harbowy, and she's brilliant. She's also a writer. She's also a Pathfinder Tales writer, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
It's a small world out there. All this stuff bounces around. It's interesting. And so she contacted me and said, you have to come to this Canadian convention. It's in Toronto. It's called Ad Astra. I said, okay, fine. It was snowing up there. I was totally unpleased. But I got to meet Ed Greenwood.
Oh,
you guys know who Ed Greenwood is, right?
Yeah.
So Ed and I hit it off, and he wrote me a blurb for one of my novels, and just casual friends. And then I went to both of those people conned me into going to Gen Con. And so
rough gig there, man.
Well, so I got an author table at Gen Con, and I really screwed up my career because I had been playing Pathfinder at that time for 4 or 5 years. And I knew Pathfinder had just started putting out Pathfinder Tales, right? Novels. And I wanted this so bad I could taste it. And serendipitously, they had just started releasing, they were about halfway through the Skull and Shackles AP, which is the pirate AP, right?
Right, yeah.
So this 4-book series I just wrote from Dragon Moon Press was a pirate series. And I won 3 national awards on that series. And so I really cramped up my courage because I was totally feeling the imposter syndrome. I can't do this.
That is so familiar, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it still is. And so I walked up to James Sutter after, because I knew he was the editor for the line. I did my homework. And I after a panel that they did on writing for Paizo, which was more like the game-related writing, how to write, how to get into writing game source materials and stuff like that. And so I walked at him and says, so you guys are doing, I'm a writer, you guys are doing Pathfinder Tales now, and here's what I can do for you. You have all this water on your map. You have all the Skulls and Shackles things going on, and nobody's writing you pirate stories. And I just came up with a 4-book series of pirate stories that won me national awards. I'm your guy. And he looked at me kind of like, who's this asshole? And he said, well, send me a writing sample. And he gave me his card, and I said, I will. And I promptly squeed and sent him a few chapters from the Scimitar series that were very nautically oriented. And a little aside, I'm a sailor.
That definitely helps.
I've been on the water my whole life. My dad was a fisherman, and I've been really into the whole tall ships thing for years and years and years. And so that adds authenticity to what I write in the nautical milieu. So anyway, 6 months later, I'm literally down in the Caribbean because my wife and I have quit our perfectly good day jobs and gone sailing, right? By choice. It wasn't like we're going sailing and we'll write. No, we just decided to go sailing for a few years, and this just
took up piracy. No big deal.
Right. Not so much.
Inspiration for the new story, right? You had to go do it yourself. So
that's actually a concern down there in certain places. Yeah,
I imagine it is.
But anyway, so we're down in St. Lucia, and I get an email from James Sutter, and it was like early January, so he'd obviously been going through his email to kind of clear out all the crap. And he ran across my sample and read it and wasn't entirely nauseated. So he emailed me and say, hey, I like your work. Why don't you write some web fiction for us? And I said, sure. And so he asked me, what I wanted to write. I said, no, that's not the way it works. What do you want? And he said, well, throw me 4, 5, 6 pitches. I said, okay, I'll have those to you in a couple of days. And in a couple of days, I had him had like 6 pitch lines for short stories. And he said, wow, that was quick. Tell you what, I like this one and this one. Why don't you write me 8,000 words in 2,000 word chapters? Each one's a cliffhanger with these characters and this little outline. And I said, okay, sure. And in a week I had it to him.
Wow. Man, that's fast.
Wow.
Oh no, that's not that fast, but it was.
Oh, really?
I made sure I wrote it in like 2 days, and then we polished it. I write fast.
Apparently,
holy cow!
I just turned in. I just wrote a 13,000 word short story for another intellectual property in 3 days, and that was edited. So yeah, I write fast.
Lord, man,
you do it enough, you get fast. You think and your hands move. And look,
is that 16 there? I mean, you wake up, you start until you go to.
Well, not all day, but I do tend to get up early and write about half a day. Until about noon. Then my eyes are shut. But anyway, I hand him this short story, and he probably said, "Wow, that was quick." And I said, "Well, I write fast." And but like I said, my wife and she actually edits. She's my first line editor on most of the stuff I write, and she's pretty meticulous. She's a PhD. She's pretty meticulous, so I knew it was clean at least. Which is key when you're handing something to an editor you don't really know. You don't want him to have to bleed through his eyes to read your work.
Right.
And so I didn't hear anything from him for about a week or two. So I'm okay, fine, So the next email I got from him, the subject line was Paizo novel, ? And when I stopped hyperventilating, because that's not the way it works, this just doesn't happen. And so I opened the email, and he said, tell you what, I like your writing style, and I like these characters. And one of the writers in our Pathfinder Tales line just fell out of the sequence. And if you know anything about novel publishing, things have to happen like a year ahead, 18 months ahead. And so to have somebody fall out within their deadline area is like, oh God, we got to fill this hole. Because they were putting out a book a month, I think, or a book every month, something like that. But it was fast.
Right. Yeah.
And so he said, if you can get me 100,000 word novel, outline first, I'll approve it. Get me the novel in 5 months. It's yours. And I said, not a problem.
Wow.
And I promptly sat down, and here's writing fast. we sat down. We were in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. We were on the hook in paradise, and I did nothing but write for 30 days. And in 30 days, I had 115,000 words.
Ooh.
That was rough as hell, because I was just possessed. I was up every morning at 3 a.m. and writing until like 2 in the afternoon. My eyes were all running and bleary, and then I'd have to take a break. And then I'd read what I wrote that morning and then go to bed. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. going, that's how that scene's going to go, and tear off again. So then it took us 3 months to edit it because it was rough. It had a lot of mistakes and stuff in it. And so then I handed it in and early, and he loved it. So then I got 2 more novels with those guys, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once like I said before, it's a small community. All these editors like each other, talk to one another, trade stories and stuff like that. And 2 years later, I had people walking up to me at Gen Con saying, "Hey, you want to write a book for us?" So
that's great.
So yeah, I've written for Privateer Press with Iron Kingdoms. I've written for Arkham Horror. I've written for Mongoose Publishing, which they're rebooting Traveler, which I mentioned before, the science fiction role-playing game.
Yep, I played.
I've done a lot of stuff for third-party publishers that are like third-party for Pathfinder. And Shadowrun. I did some short stories and now a novella for Shadowrun.
I bet that was a fun one.
Oh God, I love the world. Shadowrun is so fun to write in.
Just so gritty and nasty, and like it's got that 80s aesthetic to it a little bit.
And the whole anti-establishment thing going on. So it was really fun when I got the pitch for that from John Helfers. Because the first anthology I wrote for was World of Shadows, because they wanted shadow runs from all around the world.
Oh, okay.
Not just Seattle or Denver or wherever. And so, being me, I said, "How about a Caribbean shadow run?" And he said, "I love that idea, because if you know anything of the world, Caribbean shadow runners are a little different than North American shadow runners. They're almost like rock stars. They're very visual, very out there." And so I worked up these characters, and it was just so much fun. I'm still writing them, actually.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, I've gotten 2 short stories and a novella out of characters. And my favorite character. I'm a character writer. I just love.
I was about to ask you that. If that was
that's me. So one of the characters is Rastafarian troll shaman.
Nice.
He's big, long dreads, big, huge belly. He's a crocodile shaman. And his name is Ting, because his mama always said he was the beautiful little Ting.
Oh, that's nice.
So, yeah.
So is that how you do your stories? You start with coming up with interesting characters and develop the story around them?
It's always different. Yeah. That's kind of the real common question is, how do you get these story ideas? And some of them come out of nowhere. Some of them come out of a dream. Some of them start with a character. The Scimitar Seas novels, the 4-book series I did with Dragon Moon Press, the first book is called Scimitar Moon. And literally, I was sailing, looked up at the moon, and it looked like a thin crescent. And I said, that looks like a scimitar moon. That's the name of my next book. And I actually created a story based on that, based on this scimitar, with a little constellation next to it is a celestial event that has magical blah, 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 blah.
So if you get ideas for stories, do you just bank them away until the right set of characters or something comes along? You're like, hey, I've had this idea on the back burner for a long time. I'm going to pull that off the back burner. Or is it you get a job and then you start looking for inspiration for it? Like, is it chicken and the egg, or?
It's both. For my own stuff that comes out of my own imagination, I have a file on my computer called ideas. And these are all just things that, hey, that's a cool idea. And I'll just start writing, just stream of consciousness, throwing out ideas about what would happen if cheese was a controlled substance, which turned into the Cheese Runners short stories that I did, or novellas that I did, right? So, and that file always sits there. So if I have, sometimes I'll have, I don't really get writer's block much anymore, but if I have a moment, I'll just read through it and kind of revisit it. And, oh, that's interesting. And maybe do a little more work on it. And if it gels, if it really takes off in my mind, I'll go with it, which is what happened very recently. It's not like I don't have enough freaking work. I pulled an idea. Actually, it was a pitch to Paizo, and James liked it, but he didn't want me to get away from the pirates because it was well accepted.
Yeah.
And so I pulled this old idea out and refinished it and put it in my own world and just started writing it. And it's basically Harry Potter meets Kung Fu with magic. So, yeah. So that's the one I'm working on right now, just as kind of a what if thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We got a question in chat here for you.
Absolutely.
They're wondering which, if any, books are available on Audible.
The Pathfinder novels are on Audible, all three of them. Pirate's Honor, Pirate's Promise, and Pirate's Prophecy. And my Cheese Runners novels are on Audible. Just look up Cheese Runners. I think that's the only one out there.
I would think so. Yeah,
you're the only person who thought that cheese might be a banned substance.
Yeah, it's science fiction.
Supply, from what I understand.
It's science fiction satire. I get to poke fun at a lot of stuff. It's very off the cuff humor. And I got a great audio guy to do those. His name's Jeff Breslauer, and he's an actor. And so it's like radio theater. He does all the voices beautifully.
Oh, cool.
But they're short and they're inexpensive. And so yeah, go out and look for them on Audible, and they're brilliantly done. He just does a wonderful job. In fact, he did the first one for me, and now I hear my characters in his voices whenever I'm writing.
That's amazing. It is hard. It is really hard to unhear those once you hear something like that.
Really,
like it doesn't matter what books you're listening to. If it's a series and you hear a voice put to it, you can never unhear it again.
Right, yeah. Which is weird because between the first two novels, the Pathfinder Tales novels, and the one, they changed publication models, and they switched the production company and the voiceover people. And so I was like, wait, that's not the one. But they did a great job regardless. So I was very pleased.
That's good. Yeah, it is always that thing though. You got that one that you got hooked on. You're
right. And there's certain things you just have to let go if your books ever get done in audio, and that's things like name pronunciation, fantasy word pronunciation. If that's the way you want to pronounce it, that's fine with me. I don't care. Just enjoy the story.
Yeah.
Does it make you start thinking about words when you go to write them? Like, man, maybe I need to make this look more phonetical so it gets pronounced right when I go to write it. Is that like
writing for Audible or for audio, it does give you pause when you're writing it. When I wrote the first of the Cheese Runners novellas, it was just stream of consciousness. I'm having fun, blah, 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 blah. And then Jeff produced it, and I saw all the little flaws that didn't really work. I mean, I had a lot of jokes that were kind of, you read it on the page jokes.
Yeah.
And they didn't really work in audio. So when I wrote the second and third ones, I made sure that everything worked.
Because our group, we're notorious for taking an NPC name and just butchering it.
Murdering it.
I mean, it's
so bad.
And I always wonder when people decided to name that NPC, if they ever said it out loud. Like, did you say these things out loud to yourself sometimes? Like,
right? Oh, yeah, I do. And I try to spell them so that people can't fuck it up.
Our most famous example is probably from Exalted with the NPC that Jeff ran, and it was Fakaru. Very quickly, you can imagine what it became in our game every time we referred to this guy. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, some writer out there put that name in there, and he never once actually read it out loud. You could just tell there was no way.
Yep.
Like,
I remember staring at that book, and I'm like, "There's no way." I'm like, "Guys,
really?
How would you pronounce this?" And they're like, "Yep,
Fuckaroo."
That's what it was. I'm like, he was supposed to be this big water elemental.
His last name wasn't Fonzie, was it?
He didn't have a last name.
Yeah, Fonzie.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like a big, important, like court judge, dragon thing. I was
right.
With the name Buckaroo.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been pretty good at like just pulling names out and throwing them on the page, but then yeah, that's a hard one.
So we're talking a lot about, listening to a certain voice and having it associated with the writing. Now, different authors have different things they focus on. You're talking about characters a lot, but do you find there's a sense that you focus on in your descriptions more than others?
And that's part of the thing. The more you write, the more you try to delve in. I love the sense of smell because it's so visceral. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had evokes memories, right? Exactly. I was just saying that. You smell something like rosemary, and instantly, your mom's lamb stew is in your head, and you're starving to death.
Yeah, you get a feeling immediately.
Right, exactly. And so I try to do that a lot. Pain, of course, bad emotions, things. I go a lot more for emotions than senses per se. But I also try to bleed a little bit of realism into senses. I've written some science fiction, and I don't know if you've ever been exposed to really loud noises, like an unmuffled short barrel firearm. You fire like a .357 snub-nosed revolver, and you cannot hear anything.
Yeah,
you just can't.
Right.
And so the story goes on. Yeah, I capped off 3 rounds and then whispered to my buddy, you didn't. Not you did. It just doesn't work that way. So I try to be real about a lot of that stuff. Injuries, things like that. I have experienced certain injuries, and one thing that a lot of people don't realize is a real serious injury. Lots of times you don't know it until after the fact.
Right.
Even a broken bone. I broke an ankle once, and I stood up and walked on it, and before I realized it was broken.
Yeah, matter of how displaced it is sometimes as to how quickly it slows you down.
Right. It feels more like a punch than a true injury. I was injured by a stingray when I was working back when I was a marine biologist, right? I mean, this creature stuck a spine into my shin about the length of my finger.
Oh.
And it felt like something hit me, like somebody punched my shin. And I had no idea what it was because I couldn't see. The water was murky. I was in a marsh at the time. Oh. And I took a step back because I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I felt something slapping the sides of my legs on both sides because I was standing right on top of him.
Oh,
he was that big. This was a big stingray. And so I really freaked out because I thought, what the hell's going on? Still no pain. This is like count of 10, still no pain. And I take a step back and he left the premises still attached to my leg.
Oh.
And then, so this thing stuck in my leg and it did not come. It took 3 hard jerks for it to come out of my leg and still no pain. But I'm thinking there's a, fucking bull shark and he's got a hold of my leg. Oh. So I am literally freaking out. I mean, levitating, walking on the water, absolute adrenaline rush. So as soon as I'm free, as soon as I can run, I ran up to a berm, a little, raised area, and looked down at my shin. There's this gaping hole in my shin. I knew immediately what it was. Wow. But then is when the pain started setting in. And literally, that was 20 seconds. Yeah, but the brain overrides that stuff.
Well, there's a lot of research coming out that, we don't actually feel fear. Like there's a physiological experience of fear that is separate from the emotional experience of fear.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with pain. The body doesn't care about pain. It only cares enough to get you to change your behavior.
Right.
So if it needs you to do something, now's when you're going to feel it.
Well,
hey, now you can fix your leg.
You see that even in young kids. They fall, they scrape their knee, they stand up. They don't start crying until they see the reaction of everyone else around them. Then they start crying. Like they don't register immediately that it's hurt. They realize how they should act after they see.
Correct. But yeah, I try to put that in. When you're writing, you try to be as real as you possibly can. Fan science fiction world that you're in, but physiology is physiology, pain is pain, emotion is emotion, love, hate, fear, sex, all of that stuff. You just need to be as realistic about it as you can, and that's one
roots it to your reader's experience. Then at that
point,
point,
it's just one more thing. I'm already writing at a fantasy million. If the rest of it's real enough, you're going to suspend your disbelief of all the fantasy elements that much more readily, and immerse yourself in my world and my characters especially.
Right.
Do you find yourself taking time to do lots of research on things? If you come across something you're not particularly well knowledgeable in, do you find yourself research?
I really try to. The thing about research is it's a terrible rabbit hole, and you can spend days trying to search about what caliber of round is used in Yugoslavia in 1945 and blah, 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 blah. And so you do as best you can, you get close and hope you hit the mark. But there's going to be somebody out there who's an expert who's going to ding
every time.
I guarantee it.
There's always that guy somewhere.
Even, with 35, 40 years of sailing under my belt, I'll have people telling me, well, they couldn't do this because of this, this, and this.
The worst part about that is you've written something that's out there now, and it could be out there for like 10, 15 years. Right. And you've heard it 1,000 times, and yet you're still going to get that person who's going to come up to you like it's the first time you've been told. They're the lucky ones get to call you out.
Right. But, you never argue with anybody in that regard. You just kind of try to say, well, in my experience, this is the way things were. So, but yeah, that was two things I really tried to put into the Pathfinder team that were kind of the antithesis of the usual gaming milieu. One was the nautical encounters took a long time. I mean, because that's the way nautical combat works. Oh, look, sails on the horizon. Well, I'm going to have tea. Tell me when they're within, identification. Tell me when they're hull up. We can identify these people. So, encounters took days. I'm a huge fan of the Patrick O'Brian novels. Master and Commander was the fantastic motion picture that was made after the series of novels based on the Napoleonic Wars. And I just love the realism in those novels. And I really dumped a lot of that into my Pathfinder Tales novels. So then I had to pull back because too much nautical jargon, right? And the second thing I threw in there that shocked a lot of people was romance. Yes, my characters get laid.
Yep.
Get over it.
It happens, yeah.
But
do they have a lot of control over your writing? Do they go back through and say,
sure, of course, yes, it's their world, it's their IP. Everything got bounced off of the editor. And I really got twisted, pun intended, with the characters and the romance in the Pathfinder Tales novels, because the romance was between the pirate captain, who's a regular human man, and his navigator, who is a lunar naga. So she's like Snake from here down, right? Yeah. And she's venomous.
And some issues, yeah.
And so, challenging relationship. But to twist that knife even further, so when they first got together, they used transformative magic so that she could change into human form and they could be intimate, right? And I don't get into the nasty bits, but or the fun bits, depending on your
face black, right?
But anyway, this is all kind of in backstory anyway. But the first time, she was really nervous because she's never done this with a human before, right?
Right.
And so she kept her fangs, just in case, things get out of hand. I'll have a weapon. And so things got out of hand, but not in the way she thought they did. And she bit him.
Oh.
and he nearly died. And but he
Sometimes
didn't.
that happens.
Then that does happen. See? So, but then over the years or however long, he became inured to her poison, of course, because that's just the way drugs work.
Mhm.
And he also developed a dependency on that.
Oh man, that's an interesting twist.
So he's
Yeah.
addicted to her. So we have a real serious, interesting little codependent relationship going on. But it wasn't a romance novel, right? The novel started already a couple, right? It's just that all the stresses of the novel and all these other things that were going on really put the vice on everything that was happening between them. And but my editor loved it. And then a lot of the Paizonians read it and loved it. And I got some fantastic feedback from the readers that, hey, look, a real relationship in a RPG tie-in novel. And I was like, fucking hell.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a tough one because you got to know your audience. Like we've talked about it here on our channel. Like a lot of what we do is just talking about how different tables are different from one another. How different, what's acceptable at one table versus another. What you dress in a game,
right?
Yeah, and so
know your players.
Yeah. With our group, we're a bunch of Midwestern boys that grew up in the country, so it was like, do we want to run romance between the three of us, the five of us? Nah, not really. It happens. It's just fade to black.
Sure, right.
But other groups I've been in, they're just really, really interested in that stuff. So they get into the whole shipping and just talking about the relationships. One of the groups I'm in now, they're like upset if you fade away from the scene. They want to go straight into it. I'm like, all right.
We didn't ever really get into romance too much in playing the games, although it's interesting because I told you before that I met my wife playing D&D. Our characters started flirting way before we did.
That's how it always goes, right?
So it was interesting how that played out.
A little safe opportunity to start in there.
Yeah, a little. Well, that's why they call it role playing, right? But anyway, and like I said, it's all about knowing your players, knowing the people you're creating this game for, because it's all about having fun, right? If they're a bunch of rules people, you want to play a rules heavy game. If they're a bunch of just off the hip guys, you just want to play it loose and easy. If they want the gritty stuff, you want to really delve into hack and slash.
Sure,
it's all about the people you're playing for. So
absolutely. And that gets us to an interesting point too, is I know that we've talked about this a lot, but neither of us are writers. But when we're running a game, there's a difference between writing a story and writing a game, which players can participate in. How do you feel about that? Is there a big difference to you, or do you feel like there's a lot more overlap than we're giving credit to? Or
there's a certain amount of overlap because, like I said, I actually wrote a trilogy of novels based on a game, and it's gone through several iterations. If anybody wants to read it, just go to my website and look for the Cornerstones trilogy. Absolutely. That reads, but reading it, you can tell. A lot of people have said this sounds like a game. Well, that's because it was a game. But it just because of the plot layout and how there's things are kind of linear. Things move along in a certain direction. There are foibles. There's the big bads. The big bad has problems too. So I think if you read a novel that was created from a game, it's a lot easier to see that. But if I wanted to create a game based on a novel, say I wanted to create a game based on the Mistborn novels, which is already a game, but whatever. You're not going to see the novel in the game. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think going from game to novel, you're going to see the tracks a little bit more.
Yeah, because I think when you're gamifying something, you have to introduce so much choice. The players have to be able to deviate from what you're doing. They have to be able to add creative elements. You have to be able to react to those things, and it's going to have a different voice than what you would have as a writer.
We already feel that just with modules.
Yeah.
which are intended for you to be played. But like a lot of times you can really start to feel like those could be on some rails sometimes.
Yes, yes.
You know, and box text and everything else, you know.
Yeah, so that's why when I'm running a module, you have to really be intimately familiar. You can't just like go and open it and start playing. You have to read it through and really kind of go through with almost like a magic marker. And this part, this is just going away, and what happens if they go this direction, and just kind of figure out what you're going to do before things go off the rails. And things do go off the rails. They're going to get used to it, right? And don't get upset when they do. I have played for so many GMs who don't get the characters are going to do what the characters are going to do thing, and try to steer you back. No, you don't want to go that way. You just want to go over here. No, we really do want to go after that. We want to follow the kobold. Look, squirrel.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's the thing. If the players are grabbing all this stuff, that's because that's interesting.
Right. So
play with that.
Yeah, you have to roll with it. But I've gotten to the point with the whole imagination thing that I can literally just sit down and make shit up as I go along. If I'm GMing, just to sit down, a pickup game. It's like, okay, let's start in my world here at this city, and you guys just arrived in town, and your pocket is picked.
And you just need the hook. You just have to write the hook, right? And there you go.
Next thing you know, you're up to here in this thieves guild, and you get chased by assassins, and
there it goes. And I think that's why you can't write a game the same way you would write a novel. Because I think in a novel, you're already 3 steps ahead of yourself, but you can't be 3 steps ahead of the players necessarily.
Right. Just you're never going to second guess a player, even though if you're writing out a whole AP, a whole module of an AP, you have to write the thing so that people can play it linearly. So it kind of has to be on rails a little bit to a certain degree, but there has to be wag in there, and it's really hard to write that way.
Oh, it's super hard to imagine.
I've created a lot of games, but I always have a lot more wag in my homebrew game than I could ever put into an AP without it being like an inch thick.
Well, that would be the problem. I think it would be a rabbit hole that you could never go back down. Like, I would think that you would be just like, okay, so we're in this town. Well, and here's where I want the players to go. This is where the story's supposed to be going. But if they decide they want to wander over here, I guess I better figure out what over there. And then if they keep wandering that way, what's beyond the next hill and what's over that mountain? Like, next thing you know, you built a whole damn world. You didn't build an adventure. You built a whole world. Like,
pure scientist in me just went through the math on that.
Quit branching. Geometric progressions.
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating to me though, because there are certain stories that work in a novelization that do not work in a game when you play it, and I feel like it's the same in an inversion. Like there are certain games that are fun as hell that you would love to do, but if you wrote them out, they would be terrible novels.
Well, I think you have to go back and do a fair amount of editing of what actually went down in the game. Yeah, like you have to reconnect things different ways and rebridge it around, and eventually you could make a good story out of it. But there's some editing involved.
Yeah, when I did that, I pretty much got the okay from the players to use their characters, and then I totally rewrote one of the characters because she was completely overpowered, and so I brought her down, and then I put some other little relationships in that weren't there in their play. And I really beefed up the bad guys and gave them whole personalities. And I gave the big bad guy 2 real bitch sisters, who are the reasons he's so fucked up in the first place.
Nice.
So really breathe. Yeah, you fill in the cracks. You fill in all of the characters. You fill in all of the little pieces that aren't visible.
Right.
When you're actually playing a game. But you do get the kudo of being able to remember all the wonderful little moments when you played the game and putting those moments in prose.
Right. And you have to hit the beats.
Some of that is priceless. I'm telling you, there are moments in that game that stuff happened and we were laughing so hard. We were just laying on the ground laughing when things happened. And then I got to put that in a situation where the reader's going to go, oh my God, they can't be seriously trying to attempt this. I can't believe they're not going to, oh my God, that kind of a thing. So that was the real fun in converting the game that we played into novels. That was the real joy.
So do your players, do they read it and then like send you an email like, hey, this isn't how that went down, but it was pretty awesome. Like, I see what you did here, man.
I told them ahead of time, it's not going to exactly, but you'll recognize what's going on. But the one woman who I told her up front, I'm going to have to change your character because she's just too overpowered and I just can't deal with it. And she said, no problem.
Now, when you write,
these were really close friends, so they didn't have a problem with it.
Do you stick to power descriptions and stuff from the books? Like, do you read like what a magic missile says it looks like before you go, or anything like that?
Okay, descriptions, yes, but the rule number one of writing a game tie-in thing is you don't use game terminology. Mm-hmm. You don't want to hear the dice roll when you're reading the novel.
Right.
If you read my Pathfinder Tales novel, you'll know the character is casting a lightning bolt or a fireball, but I don't ever use lightning bolt or a fireball, or how big the sphere of flames are specifically. I might tell you it engulfs this so much of this ship or area, or that it blasts through this one person and goes on and hits the next one and the next one, like a lightning bolt does. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to use game terminology to describe those things. So, and that's honestly what makes a good game tie-in writer. And there's people that do it so much better than me. Dave Gross is brilliant at it. And other things you can do though, you can like use spells for things they weren't really intended.
Right.
Yeah. And then it becomes headcanon. People think they can do it in game, right? It goes the other way around, right?
Fault.
And they do. I've had discussion lines about one of the characters in the Pirates novels for Paizo, Celeste. She uses just a 2D illusion, or it's not 2D. It's I can't remember the name of the spell, but it's basically a silent image.
Yeah.
So it's basically a 3D image to look human. Mm-hmm. Right? And all she has to do to maintain it is concentrate. So the only rules I had to really work with is she can't really cast any other spells while she's concentrating on this spell. But hey, she can certainly take a potion or do other things or use a wand. So you work around all these little game mechanics and then put it on paper so that you don't see the game mechanics.
Nice.
So much like everybody else out there using magic, you just completely eschew material components don't have to be pulled out, right? You don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? Just
that's why she's a sorceress.
Yeah, there it is.
Just make it easy, right? No wizards. Screw it.
Yes, I totally chucked wizards out well, actually there are,
as is everyone else.
But occasionally there are material components. Some of the spells that she casts, but only when it's something like magic mirror or something like that. She has to actually have a mirror to do it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as far as like, I really didn't want to get into the wizard and all the little spell components and stuff like that.
There's some cute ones out there.
But no one else does anymore either. Nobody wants to get into it.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
The other thing that's kind of interesting, I think, about these novelizations of games is that there's all these moments around the table where you're thinking what your character's thinking about, but you don't say it. Right. That can appear in the book. Now, did you go around to the players and ask them kind of like what was your thinking at this point in the game, or did you just kind of flesh it out on your own time?
I fleshed it out on my own. But after 2 years of play and knowing these people so well, because like I said, they were close friends, I bounced a lot of it off of my wife, of course, because her character in the books was her character in the game.
Nice.
So we kind of co-wrote a big portion of those novels with her putting a lot of emphasis on how her character would do this or that or the other thing. But as far as the other two primary characters, and then of course all the villains I ran myself anyway.
Sure,
but the other
yeah.
two characters, I pretty much just took creative license and said, sorry, but hey, I'm taking it this way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess after 2 years, you really get a good sense of who those characters are if they've been acting them out and all that.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on your group, of course. Some groups
Right.
don't do a lot of acting, but if you get a real good tone established and the character starts to play itself, essentially at that point,
Absolutely,
it's probably
yeah.
easy to put down on paper.
Yeah. My dear friend who we play with, the game addict I talked to you about, she's very much into playing bards or socially interactive characters. She's very, very good at role playing and being persuasive and off the cuff, just pulling things out and just conversing to the NPCs and conning them into anything she wants to con them into. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, she really does have that. So she plays a fantastic bard.
So what kind of characters do you play when you get a chance to play?
Oh God, I am absolutely in love with characters because I'm a big martial arts fan.
Yeah,
which is how I kind of got into writing the whole Weapon of Flesh novel, because they're magical assassin novels, and the primary character he's just a martial arts badass. And doing all this stuff in slow motion in your head and then standing up and working through the moves and stuff like that was just so much fun. But I love playing a monk character. I enjoy playing a ranger. Not too much for wizards, but I like a sorcerer. I'm not a big spell slinger because I always just kind of think here's my one trick pony, especially low level characters.
Oh yeah, low levels for sure.
Yeah, but
one trick pony. Like, see, when I'm thinking of ranger, that's what I think of as a one trick pony.
See, but there's lots of permutations to rangers. There's do the with the animal companion, or you could do it with bow, or there's lots of different twists you can go on that.
Sure,
but that's true. I guess
it's interesting. The different player taste on things, because like for me, I look at wizard, I'm like, this has got the biggest toolkit, so I can do the most things.
True. That is true.
That's more true in like 5th edition. Like you go back a few editions, it was like you casted your magic missile twice, and it was like, man, I hope, like, you were always wondering why you were like elven wizards were so popular. It's because you got long sword and longbow proficiency with it, because at least then you can stand back and shoot, because that's what you were doing most of the game after that.
Yeah, I have a dagger. I can do 1d4.
Exactly. Yeah, you had to.
I got stabbed once. I'm dead.
Yeah, once you get up into the mid levels, magic is great, and the original monks were super weak at low levels too in old D&D. They were like fragile characters. Couldn't do anything. 1d4 damage with a punch or a kick. It's like, really?
Yeah, I think Pathfinder really was the first time I looked at monk and I was like, man, I think this class can do something. And then if you build it right, it doesn't. But if you build it right, it could. But it was
you can build a real tough character. I enjoy doing character builds, but I'm not all about the character build. But if there's a nice little twist I can throw out, it's a lot of fun.
That's how I approach my characters too.
I created a monk character that started off as a barbarian, right? So barbarians get extra movement, and then you become a monk and you get more movement.
Yeah, it's true.
So this guy had
the Flash.
You have just become the Flash, and you can tumble through danger spaces and move full movement. And
it's amazing that's where you went first, because most people would hear, oh, you made the barbarian so you can get that rage power when you go to punch somebody, right? Like it's all about the movement.
Yep. Well, he did get one rage too, which is kind of, but yeah.
Yeah, the old urban barbarian, maybe.
Right.
Get that juiced up decks. Yeah. Oh man, there's some nasty builds in Pathfinder.
Yeah, and there's the people that are always the perfect build. Here's the perfect build. This is the one that will win the game, and these are the people I like to play with. Honestly, it's like you don't win at D&D or Pathfinder. You enjoy the game.
Mm-hmm.
If you win, well, you're not winning. But anyway,
yeah, definitely.
So but I like to play with friends more than I like conventions and stuff like that, just because interaction is why I game.
Yeah, that's the biggest part for sure. You get the inside jokes and like the little winks here and there, and then you get used to playing off each other and little combos and stuff. Yeah. It's a good experience. I mean, I do like doing the random game every once in a while just to kind of, get a little taste of something different. Remember why you like your group the way you like them.
Right.
Yeah. I find that different DMs tell different kinds of stories. When different DMs tell different kinds of stories, even in the same system, gives me an opportunity to play different kinds of characters. So I don't mind being kind of a social butterfly that way, because then when I meet other DMs and I kind of get a sense for what they're doing, like I'm like, I can play this kind of character in this game, and where I probably couldn't in the other game. So like it gives me, I like having those kind of options open. So it's never bothered me.
I've had pickup games at conventions where I played with really proficient DM, and I've sat down at tables that were just like, oh my God, you're kidding me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone starts somewhere.
Right. But no, supposedly these guys are experienced at what they're doing, and I'm like, and you still have players?
I guess there's a table for everyone out there.
Right, I guess. Like I said, there's know your players and know what they're, murder hobo, rules lawyers, go with it. That's what you want to play.
Yeah. I think that happens sometimes with the people at convention and running games too, is they know what they're doing when they're with their 6 normal players in their home, at their game table. And then they take themselves out of that and they plop them down on this giant convention, and they got 8 people wandering in the door they've never met who sat down, and they're like, okay, let's play. And he's like, you're at a bar in the
That's
town.
An absolutely brilliant point, and you're spot on. I think there's a lot of stage fright going on.
I think those early morning sessions, they got to get that one out. They got to get that one under their belt, and then they come back feeling a little better,
Right.
Well, especially on those Saturday and Sunday morning games, they come out of the con parties, they roll out of bed. Oh God, why did I sign up for this 8 a.m. game?
Right. Yeah. Well, those are like, I've done panel discussions at conventions, 10 a.m. on Sunday. Are you kidding?
Yeah, you see the fans that do show up, they're yawning in the back, Oh, what's going on?
A friend of ours from the channel just did it at Gen Con for Zweihander. He ran the same Zweihander thing 8 times a day. And you got to know that by the 8th time that day, like he had it down to a science at that point. He figured out everything the players were going to do and like everything else. Like he kind of figured out what he needed to say. It was like reading your lines for a play at that point. Like you'd practiced them. Like he didn't have to look at things so much.
Yeah, I do think that would be an interesting thing, though, because typically, you run a story, how the story went that one time. You know what the players did and all that. You run it like 10 times, you really get to understand what that module can or can't do.
Right, because you have, every time you have 6 different people run through it, 6 different takes.
And what's consistent, what things hooked, what didn't,
Right.
That feedback has got to be super valuable to a writer.
I know, just being someone who watches a lot of streams, like I've seen some of the modules ran by different people, and it's interesting just between 2 different DMs and 2 different player groups running that same module, like the different stories you'll get, like when you see them both go through what's supposed to be the exact same experience, and it's always so different. So the way they think about tackling and changing things is always interesting. So
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of stream. I have watched some of it, like streaming play, but I'm always the type that's screaming at the computer, "No, you idiot! Do that!"
Man, I would love to tell you that you should come watch our Everstorm game because it's nautical. But as somebody who does nautical stuff, you're going to scream at the computer the whole time, going, "No, that's not how it works, Levi."
Probably will.
Hey, the good news is none of our characters know how to sail either. So
that's not true. I'm a pirate. I know what I'm doing.
Well, there's the pointy end and there's the square end, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We just got on the boat. We're like, it's day 1 as a greenhorn. Cool, we're shipwrecked. Fuck.
Well, that's because you didn't know how to fucking sail.
Hey, it did not crash on my watch. I was in the wizard box, thank you.
Yeah.
I was plotting the course successfully. I knew how to deal with the maps.
That was the interesting thing about the Pathfinder Skull and Shackles AP, they made it abundantly clear when you start reading the AP, the guide was your players have to really want to be pirates to really enjoy this AP. You can't have a bunch of do-gooders out here. You're basically violent criminals. You're pirates. That's what pirates are, So no paladins.
Players show up and went, done and done.
Right, yeah. Yeah. But, it's okay to run the chaotic good, but they have to be chaotic good. They cannot, so it's just kind of
got a different vibe to it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So,
Back.
but we had a fun time with that AP.
Yeah. So what can you do with a nautical based story that you can't with other settings?
Okay, so the interesting thing about game nautical interactions versus like the novel approach to nautical fantasy is in a game, you very rarely have a lot of time aboard the ship. It's like, yeah, we get on the ship, we sail to the other encounter, or yeah, we might meet some pirates and have a quick thing. But if you really think about a ship, it is a microcosm. It's a little world.
Model episodes. Yeah.
And this is something that really came out in the Patrick O'Brian novels is all these people, you cram 250 men onto a ship and you put it out at sea and you don't hit land for 6 months. By the time you hit land, you're either all going to be dead or they're all going to be a really tight knit and well-oiled machine. You know what I mean? There's a lot of trust involved, and there's a lot of camaraderie involved, and there are little power struggles that go on and things like this. So you have this little microcosm world, and it's fun to play in that world because you don't have a lot of extraneous things coming in to mess with you.
Yeah. Well, and then you can't get away from people.
Right. Yeah.
You're forcing interactions,
That was actually the biggest adjustment I had to make going from working a day job to going sailing was, and the big adjustment most new sailors have to make is you're on a boat with your significant other, usually, and you can't get away from them.
Yeah.
24/7 versus it, if you're both working, you might spend 4 waking hours a day together. And then you're usually doing things, right?
Right. Yeah.
Versus 24 hours a day together and not a lot to do. So yeah, it puts a lot of strain on our relationship, just like writing a novel together does. So if you can go sailing together and write a novel, marry that person.
You heard it here first, folks.
Relationship advice straight from
Absolutely. But yeah, that was actually the testing grounds of our relationship. We was on a boat together. We wrote a novel together. We didn't kill each other. So hey, this is the girl.
Yeah, that does sound like quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So it looks like we got a bunch of people showing up all of a sudden. They must have thought the usual.
That's because it's finally 10 o'clock, Jeff. This is our normal start time, so they're all tuning in.
That's awesome. Well, for you guys just joining in, we'll let you know who we're talking to here. This is Chris A. Jackson. He is a writer and has done some novels for Paizo. So we were talking a lot about the differences between writing for a game versus writing for an actual novel, and talking about just kind of the interplay between those two concepts and what you focus on, what you have to open up, and that kind of stuff. So if you got questions about that, let us know. If you got experiences of your own that you want to share, toss it in the chat as well.
We got Shadzar back, and he was saying that one of the biggest problems with RPGs and water combats is there's no rules for it. But now you're starting to see people pump out rules for water combat, like Ghost of Saltmarsh just came out, things like that. So you're starting to see some more of it.
Right. They had specialized rules that they introduced for the Skull and Shackles AP. And it was interesting. One of the very first things I had to get in a conversation with my editor at Paizo was the movement, ship movement rules for the game were totally not realistic when you're talking about long-term movement. They work great for gameplay because just, two stationary objects that aren't stationary, you're just
right.
But those speeds were so slow, it would have taken me months to sail from point A to point B. So I just had to say, I'm just gonna throw the movement rules for the ships right out the window. And he said, okay.
Yeah.
So he said, basically, just tell the story. He trusted me because he knew I had nautical experience. So
yeah, I think it's hard in games in general. I mean, the time frame and realism, it's really tricky to get that to actually make any sense.
It is interesting because just think about it. If you have two ships that are 12 miles apart, and their differential in speed is only 1 nautical mile per hour, it's going to take 12 hours to get close together.
And yet that's an opportunity, though, to ramp up tension, ramp up things between crewmates.
Right.
Like it gives your captains and your navigators time to try to alter course to pull away or to gain so that you're not catching anymore. Like,
there's a ton of strategy involved in all of that because everybody's always fighting for getting what's called the weather gauge, getting upwind of the other vessel. Then you get to dictate the engagement entirely.
Right.
So yeah, it always makes my teeth hurt when you look at nautical fantasy in Hollywood because they always have ships like sailing straight at each other, and if you look at the sails, they're all nice and square and full. It's like, okay, the wind's blowing 2 directions simultaneously. That's not how that works.
One of the best movie representations of it, Princess Bride, right? Like they look back, it's a tiny little dot. They like do some stuff. They come back later.
They're using the same wind we're using.
Right.
That's totally true.
Right. But I mean, it was just like he slowly caught up to them, and they were just nothing else they could do about it. Right. Like, it wasn't like a lot of other shows where suddenly it's like they come up over a hill. Like they treat it like a hill, like, oh, over the hill, and there they are,
Oh, there's the boat. Okay. I'll have tea. Wake me in 6 hours. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which I made sure I put that into my novels. I'm going to go get some sleep. Pick me up later. You sleep at a time like this. We've got hours.
God, that would be so weird. I mean, you think about that, just ancient fighting in general is kind of like that.
Oh, yeah.
Staring at the enemy across the way. You're like, yeah, any minute now we could be dead, but yeah, we got a couple days.
And then they disengage because the ground's not right. Land combat was pretty much similar. I mean, if they didn't like the way the land was or the field of battle, they could just back away.
Yeah.
What they could do, chase them.
Yeah, the team was like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, we'll just take a break. We'll have some tea.
Do this tomorrow.
Will do. We'll see you back about this time tomorrow. Okay. I mean, you hear these like stories about like World War II where they're like men in the trenches and stuff. I guess World War I more trench warfare, but taking time and like pausing and hanging out with the enemy for Christmas, and you're like, how does something like that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, but I guess also maybe these settings you have different encounters. Like you have people who are not motivated by personal interest in these wars.
Sure. Yeah.
And so you get these opportunities for some just fascinating kind of human moments in the middle of what is a very inhumane thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tell me about it. Yeah. Let's talk about things that happen in novels that don't happen in games, injuries and death and things like that. So I'm writing a novel for a game company, and I was really trying to breathe some life into these characters that were iconic characters for this particular game. Mm-hmm. And because I kind of thought that they were just kind of all brawn, no brains, no feeling behind the characters. And I read the very first thing you're going to do if you're going to write somebody else's iconic character is send me everything that's ever been written about this character, and I'll read it all, and I'll summarize it and see what I can do with this. Mm-hmm. So there was a battle, and this is with cannons. And so there's this crewman who's mortally injured. He's dying. Mm-hmm. But he's got a belly wound, so it's going to be 10 hours of agony, right? Oh. And so his captain, his whole gun crew is dead, and his captain's the only one left to ease his pain. So his captain basically has to murder the guy. And so the captain goes back to his cabin, and he's just crushed because he got into this is his fault. He got into this engagement because he wasn't prepared, and all these deaths are on his fault, and the blood is literally on his hands. And when editorial, that I got, and I was getting triple teamed by editors at that point. And one editorial I got that this person just really didn't understand what the big deal was, because these people fight all the time. What's the big deal because this guy died? And
That was a big difference, yeah.
Well, my comeback was, you don't know many soldiers, do you?
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
and that's something, if you're going to write military, even fantasy combat and things like that, talk to some people who've really seen bloodshed.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, if you're going to write it, if you're going to play it, go have fun.
Yeah, I think the tone is very different. We've talked about this a lot recently about how to prevent murder hoboism in general.
Right.
You know, it is about how you set the tone. Like we were talking the other day, there's a big difference between the scene in Saving Private Ryan where they're having the knife fight, right? Mm-hmm. That death scene is fucking terrible. Like there's a difference between that and watching a Steven Seagal movie.
Right.
You know, like those deaths are very different from each other. Right. And I got to acknowledge the fact that Fruitzilla's come in again and just annihilated.
Just laying down the subs on everyone he can.
Yep. That was another, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subs you dumped on us. Thank you so much. Good
Fruit
Lord.
is the man.
Yeah, this Fruitzilla is just out of control. Like every time we're on, he's getting like 5 or 6 subs for people, and it's much appreciated. Yeah, so these are it is Monday night. Thanks.
It is Monday night.
Yeah, I think there's just a huge tone
difference. That's for people who have day jobs. It's all Saturday night to me.
For some people, it's always 5 o'clock, and for some people, it's just always Sunday.
It's always Sunday, right? I always have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's pretty much true.
Yeah, I think it's really important though to get those tones sometimes, because you know, it could be very different game experiences, but I think it does something when you actually explore the humanness of these characters and the complexity of those scenes, and that you can really get a lot of mileage out of something very simple if you take the time with it and develop it out, you know, and just really feel it.
Yep.
Another 5 more subs from Fruitzilla coming in. He says another 5 more for Chris. So those are all for you being here today, Chris. So
awesome.
we appreciate
it very much.
This is amazing.
But I'm actually starting to run a game where injury is a very real thing. So it's interesting to see systems that decide to try to take that approach, where like, hey, these things will happen. It's not arbitrary hit points. It's not even health levels. It's you did health levels. Here's the injury that now associates with the health levels you just did. Like, so it does make you think twice as a player about pulling your sword and running in there.
Right. There was actually one game I used to love to play. This is the game, Secret. I loved it because it had a hit localization chart. So when you were injured, you rolled a dice and it said your left arm has just been hit for X number of points of damage, and you cannot use it in this combat. So you can't use 2 guns, you can't do your martial arts the same, things like that. And I loved that dynamic, and it was really simple, and it was clean, and it was easy to use. So many points of damage to a limb, and you're hobbling, or you can't use one arm.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this system is too. It has tables that tell you exactly what just happened and what you can't do for a while till it's healed. Like,
you can't use a bow. If your left arm is shot, you cannot shoot a bow.
It creates all kinds of interesting. It creates interesting moments, because then you have to change up your tactics. You have to have other people cover for you in certain ways. Well, you know, the scene unfolds. You know, and I like. You know, I mean, I get, Dungeons and Dragons is meant to be more of just multiple encounters in a day, just kind of get you along and have fun.
Right. But it's epic heroism,
But I like the idea of having those real fights where the consequences end up mattering. Like you got into a scrap, it didn't go so well. You won, but the next few things that are going down for the next couple weeks are going to be a little problematic.
Well, and that's where healing comes in, because the other side of that coin is how quickly can you undo what was just done, and that's the other way that you play into that same scenario.
So back in my early days of GMing, I really player who always had the potion of healing, always had this, always had that. So I had a monster actually take his arm off and swallow it. So I take my healing potion. Okay, the stump is nicely healed. So
I just have it in my
left arm. But then I threw something else at him so that he eventually got a sword that was actually part of his arm later on.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
But I fixed him, but I kind of threw a little lesson at him that you don't always have that, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that happens in games is, players never want to fall for seduction or,
Right.
get duped by something or, show pain, even though you would. So it's
Right.
almost like you need to set it up like you do have this experience. This does happen unless you roll something well, or do
Right.
something well to resist it. And I think it's too easy for people to just be like, yeah, I'm detached, whatever,
Right.
I'm Superman.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
I can take it. Right. You really can't. You're crying like a baby.
It's like, think of how many stories end up being played where that happens. Like,
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever really been in serious pain before. I have. And it's hard to keep your mouth shut. It's really hard to be quiet. So the thief who's trying to be sneaky when you've taken a bunch of damage, that's kind of like you're walking on a broken leg. It's really hard to be quiet because you're going, fuck.
At the purpose point, you just throw a Lego on the floor and say, walk across that.
Yeah, go ahead. Step on that D4, right?
I work in an emergency room, so I've got a pretty good idea.
No shit, yeah.
I see a lot of crap go down, so.
Yep. I worked in a hospital for years. Yeah.
Oof.
Worked in maternity OB for quite a while. Held a lot of hands when women were in labor.
Yeah, that will do it.
You were on the most painful floor of the building.
Yeah, pretty much.
Man, you have lived an interesting life.
Yeah, I worked in medicine for almost 20 years. That was a way to earn a living. Marine biology wasn't going to pay the rent, and my wife was much better at it than I was. So I kind of went sideways and started doing research for medical schools. And
gotcha.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
But it was fun. We did a lot of. I got to spend a lot of time in the ER and the not the ER, the OR and the ICU. I've seen surgeries that just you kind of look and go, wait a second, his chest is open. What's wrong with that?
It's a really strange experience. I mean, I haven't worked in a hospital, but I'm a massage therapist, and so we got to work in a cadaver lab when we were going.
Yes.
And God, that is a strange experience. For most of the time, you're just like, nah, whatever. It's just a thing. And every once in a while, you look at it and you see that's a person. It's like you see their hand or their eyes or something. It's those two in particular were the two that would get me. The very human things. And
yeah, I did autopsies, so I've done glorified butchery. I mean, that's really what it is. But it's all dirty work for sure.
Right. The first time you put your hand into
your audio cut out there.
We didn't catch the end of it.
Oh, the first time you put your hand into a warm living body, like inside, is kind of a shocker because you've done dissections and you've done autopsies.
Yeah.
They're all cold. You put there and wait, everything's moving and it's warm, and that puts the hairs up on the back of your neck. But putting injuries like this in the novels is a lot of fun. The weird thing about the human body, it's both unbelievably fragile and amazingly resilient.
Yeah.
A person can be killed by something that is seemingly insignificant, and then 5 gunshot wounds to the chest, and they're alive. How did that happen? Dumb effing luck.
It's sometimes a matter of millimeters,
right?
Between hitting something that you can't be without, and something that you can.
Right. One of my favorite radiographs an extra saw was a side shot of a guy who walked into the ER with a butcher knife in his head.
Oh, God.
Right here. And it had passed right between the hemispheres of his brain and was 4 inches into his skull.
Holy
and he
cow.
walked into the ER conscious.
Wow. I couldn't imagine if that happened tomorrow at work, just hanging out there and that just walks in like.
I've seen the radiograph, and the story is his wife put it
Wow.
Hysterical strength. He was freaking out. He was attacking her or something like that. I don't know what. She put a knife right through his skull.
Man. He's
Let's
lucky
be
he didn't have
fair.
a corpus
Is there
callosum
really any?
cut.
Is there really any other way that gets there?
Yeah,
I mean,
somebody put it there. He fell on the knife 12 times. I don't know how.
It's weird how that works.
no one else is getting that close to you with one of those things.
Yeah,
and,
really.
You know, without
Yeah, go ahead, joink. I didn't think she'd do it.
you just didn't believe him. That's right. So,
But
I was listening
anyway,
to a podcast about something related to this. It was so the split brain. Have you ever looked into this at all? So like people have like seizures and stuff, and like really extreme cases.
Sure.
Yeah, they would cut this corpus callosum. Yeah, so the hemispheres are separate, and apparently the two hemispheres are individual consciousness. They're not integrated. And
so I have somebody to blame for all my bad behavior.
Yeah. So like they're saying that. No, sorry, I gotta undo this moderation in the chat. Apparently, there we go. It was really weird because they're talking about how they would show things to one eye that the other one didn't see.
Sure.
And one side would come up with an excuse for why it was doing certain behaviors that were triggered only in this other eyesight. Mm-hmm. And, if you ask them questions separately, you would get different things. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? One would answer like, I want to be a race car driver. And the other one would be like, I'm, a doctor or whatever.
Yeah, weird.
But like one side had language skills and the other one doesn't. So it was really bizarre. Like, I don't know why that stuck with me, but that is just a really weird concept. And apparently this butcher knife story seemed
that thing,
like the exact same possibility there.
Yeah.
God, that's wild. But anyway, back to what we were saying there with the, just writing injuries. Like, it is stuff that doesn't get done very often. Like, I think back on a lot of what I've been reading, and you don't see enough of it, really.
It's because he has that experience. He has a certain amount of experience with the topic at hand. Like, people who don't see those kinds of things or deal with them, it would be nearly impossible to write them realistically. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure you could watch a YouTube video and really do justice. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a lot of open wounds, mostly done intentionally by surgeons, but some.
And I mean, is it harder to write fantasy wounds, things that don't exist? Like when you think of like different energy types, things that
like
don't.
Not really, because I mean, a burn is a burn. Electrical burns. Research on things like electric burns and boiling liquid burns, like boiling oil and things like that, which are some of the most horrific injuries ever.
I can imagine.
Well, I don't want to get into the gruesome aspects of it, but there's a lot of screaming, which is interesting because I did play around with ballistic weaponry quite a lot on my in my Paizo novels, because just balliste with just a shaft, basically a big arrow, seemed kind of boring to me in a fantasy milieu. So I put like detonating warheads of alchemist fire and liquid ice and acid and all kinds of nastiness going on.
With a lack of black powder to work with.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to make it a little bit more a cannons, broadsides kind of a thing, but with fantasy twists to them. So I'm sure a lot of players are going, I am so getting these warheads from my ballista. So I probably totally pissed off a lot of GMs out there. So
someone's out there homebrewing those rules up right now. They're reading that going, we're homebrewing.
But I did it all by the rules. I absolutely did it all by the rules. Tanglefoot.
Yeah. Love those things.
Resin. Think about that. You shoot that into the rigging of a ship, nothing's going to work. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to, none of the blocks will run, none of the lines will run through the block. You're just basically immobilizing a sailing.
Oh, yeah. But it's a miracle those things ever survived any contact in fights. Just everything seems so precarious and delicate. And
a lot of jury rigging, a lot of knotting and splicing and getting a scrap of sail up. Yeah. In fact, reading the Patrick O'Brien novels once again, or watching the Master and Commander of the movie, really will get you a fantastic idea about how much damage these ships could endure. And it's amazing. It's astounding. And what a cannonball does when it goes through 2 feet of oak and sends shards spraying through men. Oh my God, talk about injuries. Shrapnel wounds, basically.
Aiming wasn't an exact science either. So I mean,
no, true, yeah.
A fair amount of those cannonballs just air.
Right.
Nothing.
There's a lot more art to science than science. A good gunner had a feel for it, you know what I mean? And kind of like a good marksman. You can become a pretty decent marksman just by practice, but there are people that are just naturals at it, just like archers. There are people that just have a feel for that particular element. Well, it's like a good pitcher in baseball, right? They can put it exactly where they want to put it every single time. Put a javelin in their hand and they're a Roman soldier.
It's finding the outside of that plate when you want to, finding the inside corner, like.
Yep.
Man, let's see how that would work.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want to be on a ship in any kind of fight. That just seems like a horrible experience.
If the ship goes down, you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I think that's the end right there.
I'll say this much. I'd rather be on the ship in the fight than off of the ship in the fight at that point.
Yes. Yeah, you got me there.
The only place worse than on the ship is in the water, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like all those submarine movies, like, oh, fuck that.
Too claustrophobic for a submarine.
Yeah, that'd be pretty freaky, especially when depth charges are rattling the hull. That movie, Dustin, gave me chills thinking about, these old tin cans they sent them down in, and, things are springing and water's coming in. It's like,
no thanks. You get me in a tin can that's leaking.
Right. But, as far as the going overboard thing, this is why nautical warfare, you know what I mean?
Your audio cut out.
You cut out there in a second again.
Yeah, nobody wore armor aboard a ship in the olden times, because you hit the water, you're dead. Because you will sink to the bottom before you can get it off.
Right.
So,
well, if you knew how to swim in the first place.
No. Right. Well, that's true too. A lot of them didn't. So
there was kind of a comment that was made in chat that I thought I might bring up, and because you'd mentioned really enjoying Starfinder. Have you ever thought about going into space for novelizations? Is it the same? I mean, it's kind of the same with nautical combat, but it's not at the same time. Like,
I would love to. I have written some science fiction novels. So yeah, I've done this, which is kind of even worse than nautical combat, because once the ship's hulled, the air goes away.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's a startling thing. It's kind of like drowning, but I still can't breathe, right?
Yeah.
That's why the ship's always compartmentalized. It's only a compartment that lives there.
Yeah, everything, all the security doors close, right? Safety doors.
Get those stories of being trapped on the other side of a bulkhead or something.
Right. Yeah, one of the funnest words.
It's good writing. That's how we do it. That's
one of the most fun things to do with space combat and science fiction combat is weaponry.
Yeah.
Just thinking up different twists on weaponry. Think about ballistic firearms with unbreakable wires between them and what that would do to personnel. Things like that. And talking to soldiers about some of the stuff developed. Things like audio rigs that can tell you where a sniper just shot from, distance and direction, and automatic grenade launchers that fire and zero in on that sound.
Oh,
so it's like bang, one person's killed, and bang, there goes the grenade, and it zeroes in on where that was fired from.
Wow.
It's real-time telemetry from the computers that everybody's wearing, because you have triangulation from the whole squad and where that was from.
I bet we're not too far off from doing that currently.
That's now. That's developing now.
Wow.
So that's not
crazy these days. Well, that's the thing. Like, you look at stuff like Star Trek and stuff, right? And you look at the weaponry they use. You know, it's like, here goes a beam weapon. You're like, that should be the speed of light. You're not dodging
Right.
a ray. Like, what's the range on thing? Basically infinite. You know,
that's why you're not dodging it. They're just really bad at shooting. Everybody knows the stormtrooper problem, right? They can't hit anything with those guns.
Right. Pew, 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 and nobody can hit anything.
Right. We do have a question coming in from chat here. Air Laser has asked, what is your most prolific novel? Do you know if there's one that's like a bestseller? I would assume that's what she means.
Yeah, that would be the Weapon of Flesh series, the magical. First, it's a 6-book series, Weapon of Flesh, and that was kind of the reason I got to keep writing. I truly love writing tie-in fiction for games and stuff like that, but there's not a ton of money in it. So about the same time I started writing for Paizo, one of the novels that I had written that was kind of so far a standalone, but with a hook at the end, of course, because, hey, if it takes off, you want to be able to write the sequel. Started really taking off on Kindle. I mean, really taking off. So for a while, I was selling like 100 books a day, which if you're selling through Kindle, that's real money.
Yeah.
And so after that peaked, I promptly got online to my group and said, hey, you guys just got your wish. I'm writing the sequel. And so we had the sequel out in 6 months, and that one went ballistic. And then a year later, we had the third one out, and that one went ballistic. And that spawned kind of a second trilogy, and that one did pretty well. So that series kind of kept food on our table for almost, 5 years. So, yeah, very pleased with that one. But how that happened, if I could make it happen again, I'd do it. But it's
just lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot about getting good reviews. And once certain things hit tipping points, once you get a certain number of good reviews, it gets on, if you bought this, you might like this list.
Yeah.
And if you can just get stupidly lucky and get on the right list, if you liked this, you might like this. You'll get a few more hits and maybe a few more reviews. And right now, that first novel has gotten 50 reviews, and pretty good reviews. I mean, so, I mean, I'm not a best-selling author, but I was in the top 10 fantasy for 3 different books for
that's awesome.
More than a week. So yeah,
that's pretty good.
That equates to real income as far as a writer is concerned. That first novel sold well over probably 25,000 copies now.
Wow.
That's just Kindle. That's not the ones. That's not hard copies. That's not any other ebooks. And we've sold a lot of them internationally too.
So what kind of cut does a writer get at the end of the day?
Okay, so here's the cut difference between writing for a publisher versus writing for yourself. If I write a novel for a publisher, and this is aside from advances and everything else like that, my take is generally anywhere from 8 to 10% of net sales, right? So that's after their outlay and stuff like that. So that might equate to about 30 cents per book that would come to me. Now, if I'm paying an agent, I'm paying him or her 15%, so that has to come off of my end too.
Wow.
Writing for, I'll just Kindle. I price a book at $4.99. I take home about $3.50 per book. So it's a factor of 10 per book. Yeah. Now, that's the good side for the independent author. The bad side is I have nobody marketing these books but me. If I have a publisher, maybe they're marketing, maybe they are not marketing. So there's, but it's definitely on their website and it's getting more eyeball traffic than my website.
If they have some advantages with distribution and production, all that.
Yeah. So So there are big differences. So like I said, when I was selling 100 books a day, that turns into real money.
I can see that for sure. And it's interesting because we were talking at the beginning. You were saying that even with the success you've been having, that you're still feeling that imposter syndrome, and that's something I think we can all feel from time to time. Like every successful person I've talked to has talked about having that same exact feeling. I wonder if that ever goes away for somebody, or if it's just like all an act that everyone just pretends that they're not feeling it.
I pretend I don't feel it. I feel, it's interesting because I'll feel it before the fact. Like if I have I did a panel just recently at Dragon Con, and I sat on a panel with 3 editors from major publishing houses and 1 New York Times bestselling author and me.
Wow.
So was I feeling a little bit of a pinch going in there? Yes, I was. But 10 minutes into it, I was fine.
Yeah.
Because all of these people are just great people, and they're all in the same, and they're all love great books and great writers, and you have something to say. So, but yeah, everybody feels it, I'm sure.
I guess that's the thing. If you're there, it's because you earned your spot.
Right.
Somebody put you there for a reason. And that's
exactly.
I think it's interesting when you start getting that feedback. Like, am I actually doing anything? And then like somebody tells you, yeah, I'm really into this. This makes me feel good. Or like, I can't believe I'm talking to you. And you're like, what? I'm just a person. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like, what do I do?
That's when you're doing something right. When you have some back, like this was the best scene, or this was the best relationship, or the best, depiction of this or that or the other thing, or I really fell in love with the characters, or I hate you, you bastard, you killed them off. Which I have killed off some good guys and gotten some flack for it, but it was all flack in kind of a good way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's good.
So, yeah. I actually had an editor tell me once that I had written a death into the story, and he said, "You really don't want to kill this character because the fans love him." And I said, "I want some investiture here. It has to hurt." And so maybe he dies, maybe he doesn't. You have to read the book.
Oh, yeah. I think that's important. The buy-in is important.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, just a death doesn't matter, but you want that beloved moment. You want that, Final Fantasy VII losing Aerith kind of scene, kind of thing, or your George R.R. Martin style, Red Wedding stuff, and these are important moments to make sure that your stories have some bite to them.
Oh yeah. My second Paizo novel, I really went total whole hog in that regard, and I built these 2 characters up, and then everything fell apart, and it went bad. It went bad in a bad way, and I'm a horrible person. But I think it's one of the best things I've ever written, and people have told me, cursed me and praised me in the same breath, and I was like, that's a win. It's all about evoking emotions. If you can make somebody or love it or hate a character or love a character, it's a win. You're evoking emotions. That's what writing's all about.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite character you've written?
Oh God. I am really, really, really in with a new series I'm writing. I want to go 2 directions here. The new series I'm writing is called Tales, and it's set in my own world, and it's self-published. And I'm really loving the primary character. It is a pirate, and so to give it a little background, I kind of did the good pirates. My pirates are good guys in the Paizo novel, and when I wrote the Scimitar Seas novels for Dragon Moon Press, those pirates were more true to form assholes, right? They were the bad guys. Yeah. And so this guy, his name's Keveril Longbright, and he is morally gray. He is in it for freedom. He's a pirate because it means he is his own master. And I really put everything I had into him, and I think he just breathes life into it. And he's playing with a supporting cast that I'm really proud of too. Having said that, one of the very first novels I wrote is a standalone novel called A Soul for Sing, and that's Tsing, Sing.
Mm-hmm.
And the primary character in that novel is a young woman named Katie, and she is the quintessential physically capable, emotionally fragile woman. She's strong because she's had to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
She's been fighting her whole life to keep her mother alive, who's deathly ill. And she's had to fall into things she does not want to do to earn enough money for the medicine and for food and for lodging. And so she's a prostitute and a thief. But her soul is good, and she hates herself because she's doing what she's doing. And that's why I loved her so much. I absolutely fell in love with her. But I love that kind of a character that that has faults, has flaws, is not perfect. I hate the white knight character who is always right. Mary Sue's, I will throw a book across the room and have when a character can do no wrong. Here's my ace pilot or my gunslinger or my whatever. And they never miss, and they always succeed and always have the right answer to the riddle. Or that's not my kind of book. I want my people to fuck up occasionally.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you have to have that humanization element. Right. You have to have and we did a whole episode talking about flaws and putting them into characters and what that does, and the payoff of that. It's oftentimes the flaws are more interesting than any merit
than their class and level, right?
Yeah. Just whatever that little spin is, it just creates more tension and creates more questions about the person. More explanations have to be developed and that kind of stuff. Just a lot more hooks.
Do you think that people that are writing a story where they have absolute control of the outcomes are willing to play with flaws more than people in a game setting where you don't have control of the outcome because a DM can come down on you in whatever way they feel like after you've done something flaw-like? Do you think there's a difference there?
That depends on the GM and totally, I think. I very first thing I do because I'm a character writer, when I create a character for a role-playing, I want to flesh this person out so I know how he or she is going to react when the shit hits the fan. You know what I mean? They might cower behind the bar and say, holy shit, they're shooting. But then, grit it down and pull the pin from the grenade and toss it over the bar and plug your ears, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, that's the way I like to role play, because, everybody reacts differently to situations like that, or getting hit on by the barmaid or the suave, debonair noble, tries to pick up your character or something like that. It's like, how does somebody who's been fighting for every coin he's ever made take it when here comes this guy who can buy and sell him 15 times over, says, come over to my place, I've got a job for you. Yeah, here, let me buy your party drinks for the rest of the night. Just as a matter of course. Well, they're going to fall into that trap, right?
Right.
I would.
They should. You definitely should.
Yeah, that's a story hook.
Yes, indeed. Oh, man. So this is just
Chet's going nuts fighting over Star Wars at the moment. We opened up a can of worms in there about some Star Wars. It's going nuts down there.
Apparently the argument over Mary Sue's.
Yeah. Pews, never missing.
Now, just as a quick side, you write novels. Have you ever considered TV or film? Do you sit there? You know what? Maybe this is movie quality. I'm going to write the script instead of a story. Just write a script and go that direct.
I'm not really much of a script writer. Just the format. But I think some of the stuff that I have written that would make just a fantastic series in a Galaxy Quest kind of a milieu is the Cheese Runners novels, I think, or not novellas. I think they would just be a scream. It's basically Orville, but on a smaller scale with drugs. So yeah, I think that would be just so much fun. On top of that, I'm writing for an IP right now that is kind of like James Bond meets Cthulhu. It's called, the two main characters are Basil and Mobius, and they are a couple of British ne'er-do-wells, and they're working for an otherworldly entity. And a lot of this has been made into motion pictures, and he's hoping to get it into a Netflix series, which would be fantastic. So yeah, he likes the way I write characters, and I like the way he has created this wonderful little twist. So yeah, I've written 3 short stories. These are the ones I just told you about that I churned out a 13,000 word short story in 3 days.
Wow.
Just because of so much into it. So the first one I wrote is basically James Bond meets, 2 James Bonds actually meet Creature from the Dark Lagoon, from the Black Lagoon. You ever see that old movie?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's Clippers, actually. And throw a bunch of James Bond moves into that, and you got that one. The second one I wrote was, now anyway, I won't get into that, but yeah, I'd love to see those go into a Netflix series.
That'd be so
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, we've hit the 2-hour mark that we normally get to. How are you feeling? It does go by really quick. Yeah, I don't know if you have a night that needs to be truncated here or not, or
I don't have a day job. I wake up. Which means I'll be up at 5 a.m. writing.
Oh,
the way things happen.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a good one. We got a lot of chatter going on. I see the little bug has reappeared.
Yeah, there's a spider or something under my desk, and I'm freaking out. If I scream like a girl, you know what's going to happen.
It's going in the next book.
Yeah,
just repetitive tension building.
Yeah. What's that? Touching my leg.
Yeah. So, where can people find a lot of your content? Let's give you a plug here.
Yeah, my website is Jack's Books. That's JAX Books. So jacksbooks.com, and I've got all of my titles up there, and I have magical buttons called Click to Read, so that if you want a taste of the novel, it jumps you over to the Amazon Read for Free page, and you get several chapters of each novel. I would suggest you start at the first of the series and not just dive in. You know, some of those things at the cons. Oh, somebody will always pick up the third book and. So we always put little labels on first in series. Pick this one up first. Yeah. So yeah, drop by there. I'm on Goodreads too, but you can definitely get some content on my website, and all of my books are available digitally and in print. And if you don't read on a Kindle, you can read it on your Kobo or your Nook or whatever you like to read.
Nice. Of the books, which one do you think people should go straight to as your first dive in?
If you like the nautical fantasy, I would the series, The Blood Sea Tales. That's set in my own world. It's high fantasy, but not really super high magic. And if you like science fiction, I have the Cheese Runners books, and those are a laugh. If you like Assassins, the Weapon of Flesh novels are right up your alley. So a lot of martial arts on that one. Kerpow. So lots of fun. Yep.
So good.
Well, that's awesome.
I'm feeling pretty good with this. I had a great time. It's a wonderful time. Dustin, where can we find you these days?
All right. Well, let's see, we don't have Everstorm this week, and it's not the right week for my Zweihander game. So my next appearance will be this Sunday on Smart Gamer Live here on Twitch, where I will be joining the MMO Town Hall community, where we're going to be talking about massively multiplayer online games. So you'll be able to catch me there. I believe it's 6 p.m. Central on Smart Gamer Live. We do host them, so you'll be able to tune in here at TC2KB, and you'll see it pop up, and you can go over there and catch everything that we're talking about there. After that, I'll be back here next Monday for another Wisdom Check. 10 p.m. our regular starting time. 10 p.m. we are going to have Daniel D. Fox, who's the creative director behind Zweihander, which is a game over.
In the chat there.
A lot of those Zweihander fans will be here, hopefully, be able to see Daniel D. Fox. We'll be talking to him. Then next Thursday, the following Thursday, the 10th, will be game session 1 for my Zweihander game, the Terror and Tree Fell, which I have titled today, session 1 is Quarantine, and that's where the game will be beginning. So
good times. Let's see. And then we got the live game session that we're going to be having October 12th. So
it's right after that.
What we're doing with that, if we're going to film it up for you guys.
I think the plan's to record it and show it premiere later. So
yeah, that'll be fun. We'll get that.
We tried to do it live last time, and our game sessions when we get together live are like 12 hours, and there was just no way we could get it all into. It was the internet was getting choppy by the end, and we run out of data, and it was. We got it all there, but it was rough. So this time we think we're just gonna film it all and then put it out later. Is the plan. We'll see. So
it's going to be good. And if you guys enjoyed what we've been doing and you want to see some of our past episodes and you want to catch up on lots of different content and usual time doesn't hit you right, definitely go check us out on our YouTube channel, Tabletop 2 Keyboard. And all of our old stuff is on there, all cut up for you and edited down. So definitely take a look at that, give us some views and enjoy that. So anyway.
we got a couple other things to announce real quick too, though.
Excellent.
First and foremost, today, signed on today, we have a second sponsor in the works.
Ooh.
So I did some talking today with Tara Sands, who, if you are not familiar with who Tara Sands is, she's a voice actor, Hollywood, who most famously is known for voicing the English dubs from the anime Pokemon, Bulbasaur. She also has a jewelry business that she runs out of LA, and she makes D&D inspired necklaces and jewelry, and she's going to send me a couple samples that we're going to use for a giveaway soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that if you want to catch some cool D&D jewelry. So,
and of course, we're still sponsored by Die Hard Dice. So if you haven't got yourselves a hand of those, definitely go check them out.
And they still roll 20s.
God, every time. It's pretty amazing stuff. So I think that's all we got for tonight. So thank you guys so very much. One of those beautiful dice right there. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's been a pleasure.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Yep, this has been great. Thank you for coming by.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Excellent. Thanks, fans. And we're going to sign off.
Okay.